All right, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Five for Breakfast. We're now on our 33rd episode of 2024. Before we kick off, I'd like to thank Wesco, the platinum sponsor of Five for Breakfast. Jeff Gavelinsky put on an awesome event last week at Mountain Connect in Denver. It was a great opportunity for me to meet with a number of the state broadband offices and others who I didn't get a chance to speak with during the Fiber Connect 2024 conference we had a few weeks ago in Nashville. At Fiber Connect 2024, Assistant Secretary Alan Davidson from NTI promised to continue to push to get more states and territories their NTI BEAD initial proposals approved, and he has kept his word. We've seen 11 additional approvals since our conference, bringing us to a total of 35 states and territories that now have their NTI BEAD Volume 2s approved. We got 21 approvals left to go. The states are anxious to open their BEAD application windows, with Louisiana and Delaware fighting to be the first out of the gate, and other states are going to be following soon. Basically, the overall theme I heard from the conference is that most states plan to be shovel ready, getting projects underway in the spring of next year. And even some of these early guys are hoping to do something even quicker than that. NTI also issued a report last week analyzing fiscal year 2022 broadband deployment investment. A few key highlights from the report are that federal agencies reported $64.3 billion appropriated for high-speed internet initiatives in fiscal year 2022. $64 billion. Federal agencies also reported $11.4 billion in obligations for high-speed internet infrastructure deployment in fiscal year 2022. So now that Fiber Connect 2024 is behind us, our Fiber Connect 2025 planning is well underway for Nashville, June 1st to 4th. So put that on your calendars. And our upcoming events for the rest of this year include Des Moines in September 10th. Our Latin America Fiber Connect is in Panama City, Panama on October 1st and 2nd, and in Calgary, Alberta on October 8th. And then in Albuquerque, New Mexico, this is going to be a big focus on tribal broadband. That's on November 7th. That brings us to today's Five for Breakfast session. Our guest today is our good friend, Jeff Heynen from Dell'Oro. He's going to discuss his latest research in a session titled Projecting PON and DOCSIS Equipment Spend. Before I formally introduce today's guest, I'd like to introduce David Norris from our team, who's going to walk us through some housekeeping items.
Great. Thank you, Gary. And thank you to everybody who's joined us today. We appreciate it. Before I go over a few logistics, I'd just like to once again thank our platinum sponsor, Fiber for Breakfast, Wesco. Now, please keep in mind, all participants are in listen-only mode today. To ask a question, please type it into the question box located within the control panel on the side of your screen. We will have a Q&A session with our panelists at the end of today's session, so please do ask your questions. This presentation is also being recorded and will be available on FBA's website within 24 to 48 hours. You can find that recording in the Events tab under the Fiber for Breakfast drop-down option. And finally, at the conclusion of today's presentation, you'll be prompted to complete a brief feedback survey. Please do take a moment to do so. We appreciate your input. And with that, I will pass things back over to Gary to get us started. Gary?
Thanks, David, and good morning. I'm Gary Bolton, the President and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association. Last week on Fiber for Breakfast, our guests were FBA's top research partner, Mike Render with RVA, and John George of OFS, our chair of the Fiber Broadband Association's Technology Committee. They discussed their latest study, why you should always sign up for a Gig Plus service. This study clearly illustrates how subscribing to a gig or greater will boost U.S. GDP by, drumroll here, $326 billion. $326 billion. After I reviewed the report, I immediately increased my home broadband speeds to the maximum level. I didn't realize how much time and productivity I was losing. So I encourage you guys to do the same. Today on Fiber for Breakfast, our guest today is Jeff Heynen from Dell'Oro, discuss his latest research in a session titled Projection PON and DOCSIS Equipment Spending. Jeff joined Dell'Oro in 2018 and is responsible for broadband access and home networking market, fixed wireless access infrastructure and CPE, and cable outside plant and market research program. Jeff's also authored numerous articles, white papers, and his research and analysis have garnered widespread citations in leading trade and business publications. Furthermore, Jeff is a frequent judge and invited speaker at industry conferences and events. So welcome, Jeff. And for audience, please type in your questions as we go, and we will work them into the Q&A at the end. With that, I'll turn things over to Jeff.
All right. Thanks so much, Gary. Thanks, everybody, for joining this morning. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide, and we'll get to the numbers. Keep going here. We always have this introductory preface information, but let's go straight to the trends data. I think that's slide 5. Yeah, so let's start here. So the last time I spoke was in May, I believe. At that point, we had just gotten some of the first quarter numbers in with respect to equipment spending in the North American market, and it was still a bit of a rough quarter. We're getting early numbers in now for Q2, and I will say that thus far, the numbers are surprising on the upside. So that's a positive, because when it comes to equipment sales into service provider networks, things have been relatively slow here for a long time here in 2023, and also extending, as I mentioned, in the first quarter of 2024. But, before we go into what I've changed in our 5-year forecast, I just want to quickly go over the trends, and these are macro trends that haven't changed, and they drive our assumptions and serve as kind of the high-level model for our forecasts. First of all, Gary mentioned all the subsidies that are going into expanding fiber broadband networks. Total U.S. subsidies of $130 billion. And of course, that amount is dwarfed by the private capital that is going into these networks, either through joint ventures, private equity, and then operators spending their own money to expand their footprint. In addition to that, we don't see, there has been a slowdown, yes, in data consumption, but look, when you compare it with what happened during COVID, we're still seeing normalized rates, an 18% CAGR in residential internet traffic going from 2017 to 2026. And in addition to that, we're seeing use cases change, right, for residential broadband. There's more interest in low latency use cases, which the more speed you provide, the more throughput you provide, typically the lower latency you can deliver as well. So that, of course, drives our forecasts in addition to the subsidies. Finally, we're also looking at the fact that broadband is now expanding into different use cases. It used to be, specifically with PON, used to be a residential-only technology, and now that's moving into enterprise applications, IoT support, and also mobile and edge transport applications. Lastly, we still don't know what generative AI and what kind of impact that's going to have on traffic and data consumption. We're really in the early stages, right, of laptops with AI, generative AI tools built in. Phones are just now coming out with those tools built in, and it's really too early to know. We're actually at the beginning of a refresh wave of laptops and consumer electronics, basically to replace all the units that were purchased during the COVID, the pandemic. Well, let's go to the next slide.
Hey, just on that topic,
Yeah.
next week is going to be, our session is going to be on generative AI and how that impacts fiber. So people want to dial in there to find out what's going to happen.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, definitely. So let's just go. I just want to go ahead and show you at a macro level, right, all the spending on equipment in North America. We're expecting this year in 2024 total spend to drop about 9%. I'm going to raise that just a little bit, so maybe it'll decline about 7%. But clearly, there's a lot that's going to happen here in 2025 and beyond with BEAD funding, shovel-ready projects obviously getting ready to go, and then a reinvestment cycle now that operators, tier one operators, have gone through their inventory correction. We talk to vendors now. It appears that cycle is largely over at this point. But when you look at the aggregate right now, the market here in 2024 is really being impacted by the fact that DOCSIS CPE or cable CPE units have just nosedived. Obviously, we know that fixed wireless has been taking a subscriber share from cable. We're seeing that the largest tier one operators haven't grown their subscriber base, or they have net subscriber losses at this point. And so we're expecting CPE units and the revenue associated with those to decline by a 36% this year. Obviously, there's lots of other things going on in the cable space, which we'll get to. And let's go to the next slide. So from here, what has changed in our 5-year forecast? We do our forecast twice a year, once in July and once in January. So the numbers here are from our most recent July forecast. We've increased in North America our PON equipment revenue by 2 percentage points, the 5-year CAGR, up to 5.6%. The DOCSIS equipment revenue, we've actually increased by 4 percentage points, and that is solely due to that significant decline in DOCSIS CPE. So really, you're starting at a much lower level than we were anticipating in the January forecast. And then on the fixed wireless CPE side, we've actually brought down our forecast slightly. What we are seeing now is a healthier market, right, for fixed wireless CPE, more competition, and so price points that are beginning to come down. And so those now have been reflected in ASPs that have been dropped down for each of those units. Well, let's go to the next slide, please. So looking at OLT port purchases by operators, you can see right now in 2024 that the infrastructure investments have slowed. And that certainly is understandable, just given waiting on the subsidization efforts that are going to begin next year and then well through 2028. And also, again, through inventory realignments, right, that have happened at Tier 1 operators. There's also been, and for some operators, a slowdown and a correction in the number of homes passed and their homes passed goals. And in a lot of cases, that's largely due to the fact that labor remains at a premium. It's difficult to achieve the key performance indicators for some of these operators in terms of homes passed. And so therefore, they can sit on OLTs if they're just not passing as many homes. That's not the case throughout the industry here in North America. Certainly, we have Tier 2 and Tier 3 operators, utilities that have more than surpassed their homes passed goals. But when you balance that against the Tier 1s that have reduced some of their goals, I mean, they're trying to pass hundreds of thousands to millions of homes. So that has a direct impact on the number. The point here is that we do see an improvement and a ramp and a clear investment cycle particularly in XGS PON. We also see that cable operators will ultimately shift from their current 10 gig EPON or DOCSIS provisioning over EPON to XGS PON. There are software options now that are available from multiple suppliers to support that transition, being able to support and manage and provision subscribers on XGS PON just as they do with their DOCSIS protocol. So let's go to the next slide, please. Now, despite the fact that OLT port shipments are expected to decline this year, take a look at the fact that in 2024, we're actually expecting to see now a slight increase in ONT units. So that's a very clear sign that the inventory correction and rebalancing that happened throughout 2023 is largely over. And also, it's a reflection of the fact that XGS PON ONT ASPs are now at acceptable levels for operators such that they can go ahead and comfortably invest in that technology and go ahead and buy those units to support multi-gigabit services. Obviously what Gary mentioned that are going to boost GDP going forward. So we're not expecting to see a slowdown at all in ONTs going forward. In fact, as the fiber subscriber base continues to grow, operators are going to continue to need more units, both from to turn up new subscribers as well as to maintain in their inventory for refresh and replacement purposes. So, we're still very positive on the growth of the ONT market and fiber homes passed and connected in general. Let's go to the next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we do track subscribers as well. We're expecting now that by 2028, fiber subscribers should be around 30% of all broadband subs. Could be a little bit more depending on how quickly some of these projects get underway and how efficient they are in terms of getting homes passed. And of course, these subscribers are going to come largely in duopoly type markets. There's going to be share taken away from cable, and we expect cable share to decline from 64% of total broadband subs in 2022 to around 55% by 2028. I'm actually forecasting, I've seen some other projections that maybe have cable share declining to 58%. I'm actually forecasting a higher percentage of fiber overbuilding by MSOs. And the reason being is certainly in the tier 2 and tier 3 market, we hear a lot about smaller cable operators moving away from having to make the decision with DOCSIS 3.1 to DOCSIS 4.0, taking advantage of the reduced operational costs that PON and fiber networks bring, and just going ahead, making sure that they protect their existing territory by having a fiber offering. Too many variables for them to risk jeopardizing their business by not moving to fiber. And so therefore, that's where that fiber overbuilding is happening. In addition to that, the cable operator every year surveys their plant. And every year they say there's maybe 3 to 5% of the plant that's aged to the point where it becomes almost cost parity to go ahead and overbuild with fiber, as opposed to replacing all the taps, passives, filters, nodes, amplifiers, etc. And so you start to aggregate that 3 to 5% over a period of time, and you'll see that in addition to the greenfield build-outs, even larger cable operators are continuing these fiber overbuild efforts. So that's where I think things are headed, and I'm always happy to discuss those projections. I hear a lot from cable operators with respect to that, but that's kind of where I think things are headed. Let's go to the next slide. So I guess that's a good segue. So, cable operators, we know Charter has been very vocal about their RDOF builds, right, that use remote OLTs. These are all edge out projects, right, from existing nodes. They go ahead and deploy remote OLT modules into existing nodes, or they replace the node housings if they can't support those remote OLT modules. And so they are being successful in terms of expanding their networks using PON, 10 gig EPON currently. So you look over time, and we see more operators following that path, deploying more of these remote OLTs as a way to gradually introduce fiber into their network, start to peel off service groups from DOCSIS to fiber. And these are the remote OLT ports. We also kind of track the head-end based OLT ports, some more in urban areas and more densely populated areas. We're looking at 10 gig EPON OLT ports of cumulatively between 180,000 between 24 and 2028. So multiply that by a split ratio of 64 on average, and that gives you a potential additional subscriber base of fiber subscribers that cable operators can address. Let's go to the next slide, please. So if cable operators are expanding their fiber footprint, We know that's happening at the tier 2 and tier 3 level. There are some tier 1 operators like Cox that have been using XGS PON as well. They have a unique network of ring and ring architecture that allows them to more economically go ahead and deploy fiber. So they've been doing that certainly in greenfield buildouts. But what we're seeing on the DOCSIS side, we've got this upgrade cycle in advance of DOCSIS 4.0, or to prepare their networks for DOCSIS 4.0. And these are what I'm thinking here are the tier 1 operators: Comcast, Charter, Cox, Rogers, Shaw. They've got a cycle here that's going to run through essentially 2027, maybe bleed into 2028, where they're upgrading not only their remote PHY devices and virtual CMTS platforms, or introducing those into their networks to replace, the legacy CCAP platforms. At the same time, you can see to the chart on the right, they're also investing in their outside plant to support the transition to 1.2 full duplex in the case of Comcast, right? Symmetric full duplex DOCSIS 4.0. And then for everybody else, moving to 1.8 gigahertz in the outside plant to do extended spectrum DOCSIS. So that investment cycle is on its way. In some cases, it's started a little bit this year. It's been delayed. If you look at my forecast in the outside plant from last year versus this year, you'll basically see everything shift to the right. And that's not unusual in the analyst business when new products are introduced and we get feedback from vendors. They're very excited, and so there's sometimes a bias, right, in terms of the aggressiveness with which these technologies are deployed. Well, it's not only that here in the case of the outside plant, but it's also the fact that there's still some confusion and discussion happening around which technology to deploy. Cable operators also have the option of not moving forward with DOCSIS 4.0 at all, and instead capping their DOCSIS investment at DOCSIS 3.1. Maybe they deploy DOCSIS 4.0 modems to do DOCSIS 3.1 plus, which gets them 5 to 6 gigs of downstream bandwidth. That's very, very competitive. But at some point, this investment cycle, right, it tails off, and they begin to generate or focus on generating the revenue on these new systems and on this new infrastructure. So you can see we're projecting that 2027 is that peak year for investment for cable operators, and then who knows what comes after. I think that's the big question of the day. I think that concludes my prepared slides. So Gary, I'm happy to take some questions on these numbers.
Yeah, Jeff, I always love your research. Great stuff. Hey, David, can you roll back to slide 12? I just want to hit a few things. So on slide 12, yeah, thanks. You had said that there's going to be a 7% decline. You have 9%, but 7% in 2024. Is that largely in the first half of this year due to the inventory drawdowns, and we should see everything normalized now? I mean, when I look at all the earnings, it looks like inventories are normalized or about normalized. So second half should be much more robust than the first half.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So the first half, especially this first quarter, was certainly a challenging one for the vendors. Not a whole lot of new equipment purchases in that space across the entire vendor community, and this didn't impact every vendor. It certainly depends on who the end customers are, right? But we are, as I mentioned, second quarter improved significantly. If you're looking on a year-over-year basis, the second half of the year should be kind of a modest improvement over 2023. It's just not going to be enough to get to parity in terms of spend with respect to 2023, but that's all because of what's gone on in Q1.
But for equipment vendors, hopefully the pain of the last 18 months is behind them, and they should be more heading in the right direction going forward.
Yes, absolutely. I think they're feeling far more optimistic than they did going into the year. And that's, I mean, that sense is palpable in my discussions with them. And the projections from all the vendors for the rest of the year are very positive.
All right, David, hit 14, slide 14. So here again, I think you show a dip, the 2024 dip, and I'm assuming that we had the big inventory buildup in 22, so that kind of part of the run on the COVID inventory buildup, and then what we see is the dip as we work down that inventory, and so now we should see PON continuing to be grow year over year throughout the end of the decade. Is that what we should think about that?
That's correct. Yep. And really now there's consensus among the operators that XGS PON is really the way to go. Whether that's through combo optics or traditional XGS only optics. I think operators see certainly a light at the end of the tunnel, and a very clear consensus around delivering anywhere from or offering 2 gig to 5 gig symmetric services over that plant.
Hey, David, hit slide 18. So here you're saying that cable's making this big last time buy for HFC outside plant. I mean, why would they do that, right? I mean, if they're all going to be moving to XGS, is what you're saying. Why not just go ahead and make that investment in the future rather than interim investment to kind of hold them off a little bit longer? Is it just because they have too much installed base and it's cheaper in the short run to just throw a bunch of new taps and amplifiers and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, for a tier one operator, the capex that would be required to pass millions of homes with fiber is would be very difficult for their investors to swallow. And Verizon did this years ago, right? And they were panned by everybody by making the wrong move. And yes, it was costly in the beginning, but they found efficiencies. Ultimately, I think cable operators will move in that direction. But for tier one operators that have functional HFC plant, I mean, this is the way they're going to move forward and compete in the short term. Time will tell whether that was the right investment decision or whether they should have migrated or made a quicker transition over to fiber.
Well, if they want to be good stewards in the environment, they would move all their investment to fiber ASAP. Our latest sustainability working group's latest studies showed that even DOCSIS 4.0, when compared to fiber reduces carbon footprint by 96% over DOCSIS 4.0. So not a good investment in power and energy.
There's certainly, I mean, the new products are more efficient, but there's no getting around the fact that when you have passive infrastructure in the outside plant, you don't need to power it. And when you don't need to power that, you're using less energy and less carbon footprint.
Well, and that kind of one of our attendees, had commented that he's heard Comcast they're planning to milk their HFC plant while building greenfield and opportunistically overbuilding their HFC plant. So would cable equipment supplier revenue should suggest that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the large tier ones are going to continue to drive. They still have this upgrade cycle from legacy CCAP and traditional optical nodes, right, to VCMTS and remote PHY. So that's going to drive that investment through 2028. But you can already see 2026 is the peak of that investment, and then it starts to moderate as they begin to add more fiber, like the viewer said, opportunistically. So, for the suppliers in the cable space, they have to have a foot in the HFC realm as well as the fiber realm for longevity, because ultimately that's where their customer base is going, and they want to continue to rely on those vendors, but they need to know that those vendors have a long-term fiber story and a transition story for them.
Well, hey, Jeff, man, I'd love to keep going, but we're out of time. You always have great information. So really appreciate your research and your continuous contributions to advance our industry. So thank you so much, Jeff. And there's still a lot of great questions here we didn't get to. So perhaps you can follow up on those. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Look forward to getting back together next Wednesday. We're going to have our good friend Ron Westfall from Futurium, who's going to discuss AI driving fiber deployment transformation. So you're not going to want to miss that. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And Jeff, always great to see you.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you, everyone.